Hello, everyone, and welcome. Tonight we are back with the pitskill.io, with the SimQuips Porsche Cup, and tonight we are at Zandvoort in the Netherlands. And as our drivers start qualifying laps, it gives us just a little bit of time for us to go through our standings for this series. At the moment, it is Reese Tattersall, the driver we are watching right now, leading the way, ahead of Chris Wright and Sam McCarthy. And with a number of drop rounds, still in discussion whether it be 3 or 4 drop rounds from this series, but does mean that anything can change if some drivers just pick up some good results in the upcoming races. We are just 5 races into this 12 race series, as we're just waiting for the first of our drivers, which will be Reese Tattersall, to cross the line. And we will see what a representative lap looks like here at Zandvoort in these Porsche Cup cars. So Reese Tattersall crosses the line with a 1 minute 38.87. As we have drivers filling in behind with the 39s and 40s. So looking like expect to see drivers maybe getting into the low 138s, maybe dropping into the 137s as this session goes on. There's Bernhard Bendel crosses the line to go P2 for now with a 1:39.085, just 2/10 of a second off of Reese Tattersall's provisional pole time. Still 10 minutes remaining of this session, so plenty of time for drivers to find the grip, find their pace at this circuit. Tricky technical circuit here at Zandvoort. As new driver Johan Leff crosses the line with a 1:38.4. Very solid lap time there from Johan. And the newcomer laying down the gauntlet. Just checking. Oh, I say newcomer. Actually, Johan has previously competed in the Porsche Cup race. Got a P2 in the round at Mazzano. So apologies, Johan. I was not commentating that round. As Ryan Ware goes to the top of our timings for now. 1 minute 38.420, just 5 thousandths of a second faster than Leff. Ryan Ware, our winner of the first round out in Bathurst, which I recently learned was his first time driving ACC in over 5 months. And yeah, an absolutely phenomenal drive from Ware, and has been showing good pace throughout the rest of this championship. Had some good battles with our current championship leader, Reese Tattersall. So hopefully they will provide for us again tonight. So Ryan Ware may just want to concentrate on keeping all 4 wheels on the black stuff at the moment. Not much grip out there on the grass, although not quite as slippery as grass at Brands Hatch last week yet. As Leffer crosses the line again to go onto fastest point of the standings. Apologies for that messed up sentence. We're 1:38.167. Very solid lap time. And we might see drivers dropping into the 1:37s. There's still just over 8 minutes remaining of this session. Yellow flags out for Joe Wilson. In the Tesco Racing Car, which unfortunately I don't at the moment have the liveries for. So apologies to Joe. And we've got some drivers close in the standings from P15 downwards. And Joe Wilson, currently sitting in P19, is just 20 points off of George Perks in P15. Perks not here tonight, so Joe Wilson could see himself jumping up the standings, currently sitting in P7. And our series sponsor, Chris Wright, currently sitting on a 139.2. Is up on his previous best time through the first sector. And battling with the track limits there. Shouldn't have lost too much time from that little bit of an excursion into the gravel. Just dipped a wheel in. We come into the tricky final sector. Long run down the straight into the chicane at the end. So far, not seen too many drivers have any incidents with these Porsche Cup cars at this circuit. Surprisingly, few yellow flags as Wright just dips and wheels out onto the gravel. Needs to carry the momentum through and should be a decent improvement on his previous best. And moves up into P4. Another driver looking to improve and on a very solid lap at the moment is Bernard Bendel. He too crosses the line and jumps Chris Wright into 4th position. We're going to check back in with Johan Leffert, who is on target to be the first of our drivers to dip into the 1:37. Comes to cross the line, and it's going to be a 1:37.870. So solidly inside the 1:37, and that's a real benchmark, a real gauntlet thrown down for the rest of the drivers to try and match. And there's Owen Huxtable now looking for an improvement in their lap time. With just 5 minutes now remaining of the session. Oh, and it's the first big slide we've caught as Owen Huxtable tries to get on the power. Going around into the third and final sector and goes into a real tank slapper there. It will not be completing that lap. We're checking with the next driver who looks to complete their lap. A couple of corners to go for Chris Wright. Again, dipping some wheels out onto the gravel. That is going to hurt his momentum down to the line, but should still be able to improve. We'll be challenging Bernhard Bendel for that 4th position. Crosses the line. It is just 5 thousandths slower than Bendel. And he will have just over 4 minutes to try and improve that time. Check in with Marco Lorenzon. Had a good round out last time at Brands Hatch. And I believe that is Reese Tattersall. We can see just in the background behind Lorenzon and on a charge, but it's Lorenzon we're going to follow through to the line. Currently sitting on 139.4 in 10th position. Finding a little bit of time. Just a 10th of a second would see him jump up 2 positions on the grid. So going to be an important lap this one. Finding a little bit of time and crosses the line, and that jumps Lorenzon up into P8 with 139.172. And our driver looking for some late improvements is Steve Goosens. Oh, and a big tank slapper coming out of the chicane into the final sector. Well, he was up by a second on his previous best. Still up at the moment, but perhaps just pushing a little too hard. We'll have time to get in another couple of laps, but throwing away an opportunity there to move himself up the standings, or at least up the grid for tonight's race. So 140.4 for Goosens, but could have been so much better, and needs to completely forget about that lap and go out for another. Back in with Reese Tattersall, who will be wanting to try and get themselves back into the pole position that they've had on so many races in this Porsche Cup Series, but has got almost 0.5 of a second to find. The tall order for Reese Tattersall with just a couple of laps remaining, should cross the line with just about enough time to put in 2 flying laps, though it is going to be close as we are 1 minute 50 seconds remaining on the session. He crosses the line for a 137.952. Second driver to dip into the 137s, but as yet not really seeming to threaten Johan Leffe. Bernhard Bendel coming around the final sector now. Currently a little way off of Ryan Ware in P3. Should see them improve their lap time with this lap, but it's going to be a challenge to close that gap to Ware. We'll have one more lap to attempt to do so. It's Reese Tattersall, who we are going to check back in with, who needs to find 0.08 of a second. Currently 10th up on their previous best. And let's just hope we're not going to throw a commentator's curse his way, because this is looking like a sensational lap here for Tattersall. Just needs to hold it together for the final sector. This could be on for provisional pole position for tonight's race. Doesn't look like Leffe has got quite enough in this lap to be able to improve to challenge. Just a little bit of a twitch there coming through the final corner, though no apparent lift from Tattersall as he comes to cross the line, and I think he's going to have done it, ladies and gentlemen. A 137.680. That is Reese Tattersall on pole position yet again in this Porsche Cup Series. Another driver looking for a late improvement is Joe Wilson. Does he have enough in him to challenge the likes of Huxtable, McCarthy, and even right ahead of him? We just got one final sector, and we will find out. Finding his improvements right at the last moment in this qualifying session. Currently up 0.3 of a second. Would be enough to jump him to P6 ahead of McCarthy. Oh, and it's a slide from Wilson, and he will not get to complete the lap. And just a little bit of carelessness with the right foot has thrown away a couple of grid positions there for Wilson. Well, for tonight's race then, that settles our grid order. It will be Reese Tattersall starting alongside Johan Leffe on the front row, followed by Ryan Ware, Bernhard Bendel, Chris Wright, Sam McCarthy, Owen Huxtable, Joe Wilson, Lorenzon, and Balazs Feher. And out the top 10, and we'll be back in just a few short moments for tonight's race. Welcome back, everyone, as we get ready to start tonight's race. We have just enough time to go through our grid walk for starting grid. Pole position is Reese Tattersall. He's followed by Johan Leff, Ryan Ware, and Bernhard Bendel round up the second row. Chris Wright, Sam McCarthy, Owen Huxtable, Joe Wilson, Lorenzon, and Balazs Feher. Not GT and Kukinskas, Goosens and Smith, Faggy and Damore. And then rounding out our grid for tonight's race will be Harold Ketremeyer. As our drivers get ready to drive away on our formation lap, we will be just a few short minutes away from the green flag for tonight's race here at Zandvoort. There's Joe Wilson taking an interesting route around the first corner. I did warn these drivers I would be on the eye out for formation lap spinners. And so maybe Joe Wilson there just giving a little bit of a show to the cameras. As Reese Tattersall leading away a reasonably slow formation lap as our drivers behind just get into position. The helicopter cam giving us a glorious view of the sand dunes here at Zandvoort. Quite possibly the largest undulations you're going to see anywhere in the Netherlands. We take a look through our order. Everyone so far in their positions correctly. And as for drivers we might want to keep an eye on in this race, we've got Christian Fegge potentially somewhat out of position. So it'll be interesting to see if he can charge through the field. As not sure if there's connection issues here for Reese Tattersall, or if this is issues on my end, but that car seems to be jumping around substantially. We get ready to get this 30-minute Porsche Cup race underway here at Zandvoort. It will be Reese Tattersall ahead of Johan Leffe as we come into first corner, with Reese Tattersall having the inside line. We just wait for the green lights to wave. And it's a poor start from Tattersall as we've got carnage behind. I'm not sure what's happened here, but just like Reese Tattersall not getting away, and it is Johan Leffe leading the way, followed by, I believe, Chris Wright and then Ryan Ware. As we've had absolute carnage at the start. Reese Tattersall to the pits. And Bernhard Bendel with considerable damage to the front of his car. As Leffe leads the pack away. Absolutely baffled as to what happened there. We'll get a replay of that incident. Very bizarre one. As we start, it just looks like Reese Tattersall doesn't start as Ryan Ware goes into the back of him. Very bizarre incident. As Johan Leffer leading the way, a considerable lead over Chris Wright now. With Ryan Ware now hot on the back of Chris Wright. And yellow flags out for Owen Huxtable, who seems to be stranded at the end of the second sector. Not sure what happened with the 110 car. Though I'm seeing an incident on the incident sheet. Let's see what has happened to the number 110. Oh, as he tries to go up the inside, I believe that is of the 114 car. 114 is Goosens. That's the driver we're looking at now. So Huxtable going for a bit of a lunge there, and it didn't come off. And we got a number of cars in the pits. Tattersall, Huxtable, McCarthy, Lorenzon, Katchelmeyer and Bendel all in pit road. But we'll turn our attention to the battle for P2 as Ryan Ware chases down Chris Wright. And Ware has gone deep, and this could present an opportunity for Fahey. Right on the back of Ware. Just trying to carry a little bit too much speed through that fast downhill left-hander. And perhaps the damage on the front of that Porsche sustained the non-starting Tattersall. We have yellow flags out for Kinskas. What has happened here? He's back underway. They come down towards the chicane. And was there contact? I'm not sure. I didn't see it. We just about missed the start of that incident, if there is one. As Christian Fahey is chasing down Joe Wilson. We've got a number of drivers going into pits. Chris Wright as well. Didn't see an incident with Chris Wright, so not quite sure why he has decided to dive into the pits. So there's no mandatory pit stop in this race. Okay, looks like we are going to be restarting this race due to the incident at the start. So we're going to go into a short red flag period, and then we'll be back for tonight's race. Please do bear with us. Hello, everyone, and welcome back as Reese Tattersall leads the formation lap around again for the second time of asking. Reese Tattersall pulls to the side. I'm not sure if that is an issue there or he is just allowing the pack to make its way past, as an issue for Tattersall did cause the red flag at the start of the first race. It does seem that we have lost Tattersall from tonight's race, or from the session anyway, so maybe starting from the pit lane or his hardware issues mean he needs to exclude himself for tonight's race. But regardless, we have got now Leffe leading Ryan Ware on the front row of tonight's grid, followed by now Bernhard Bendel and Chris Wright as they come to make their way around the final corner. We are but short moments away from green flag conditions here at Zandvoort. And this could be a real opportunity here for Ware, who will have the inside line with completely clean air in front of him. And P1 usually starts from the inside here at Zandvoort, but with Reese Tattersall having to leave the session, Ryan Ware must be considering his opportunity here. As they head down towards the start line, we wait for the green light here at Zandvoort. And we are racing in the Netherlands as Johan Leffe. It's a good start ahead of Ryan Ware as they come down towards the first corner. It's Chris Wright looking up to the inside of Ryan Ware as there's contact between Bendel and Ware. Everyone so far through the first corner in pointing the right way. And it is Leffe leading the way ahead of Ware and Bendel, as Chris Wright is dropped back a number of positions. Now Bendel's followed by McCarthy and Wilson, as we've got yellow flags out for Huxtable. As what has happened here, Huxtable on the inside. The 103 car of Fahey. Oh, and just a little too eager on the throttle has sent his car spinning around and into the barrier. But at the front, it is Johan Leffe leading Ryan Ware and Bernhard Bendel. We also have yellow flags out for Harold Ketchelmeyer. Bernhard Bendel is on the offensive, chasing down Ryan Ware. There's a little bit of a gap in front of him to Johan Leffe, who is pulling out a lead, though not as substantial as they did before our session restarts. Start our second lap. Got a few little trains appearing here. First one being headed up by Ryan Ware, back to Chris Wright in P6. And then Lorenzon heading Fahey, Fagi, Kinskas and Goosens. We head into the second sector, and it's Lorenzon, I believe, or is that Fahey taking to the grass? That is Balazs Fahey taking to the grass, and Christian Faggot looking for a way past. Well, as Faggot takes a little bit of gravel there. And so far, most drivers keeping it clean, keeping it on the track. So I need to remind it, this is a 30-minute sprint race. No pit stops required. As Joe Wilson looks up the inside of Sam McCarthy, makes it to the apex, but runs deep. Going to allow McCarthy to come back through. As Wilson taking a little bit of a cheeky line there through the gravel. Obviously not wanting to rejoin into the path of another car. Completely understandable. And slots back in behind Chris Wright. So McCarthy and Wright both inherit a position from that instant for Wilson. As Christian Fege on the attack against Balazs Fahey, not close enough to have a look up into turn one this time around, and gets on the throttle a little early there, runs out onto the curbing, manages to keep it out of the gravel though. So far, Lorenzo holding position here at the front of this train. Not being able to slip away from Fahey, but not under too much pressure either, as Fahey this time does fully take to the gravel. Bounces back onto the circuit in front of Kukinskas. Thankfully, far enough ahead not to cause any sort of impediment to the gold car. But now, Kukinskas trying to eye up an opportunity here on Fahey. Oh, as Goosens just losing the rear, bouncing off the barriers, able to keep going. Let's take a look at that from another angle. As Goosens, just pins the throttle, lights up the rears, no traction control on these Porsche Cup cars. You have to be so gentle with the throttle. As Chris Wright holding position ahead, Joe Wilson. And what was looking like a little bit of a challenge there from Wilson has just slipped away. And as Goosen's now finding himself under pressure from Busso GT. As Goosen's running slightly wide through the fast right-hand downhill corner. And out onto the grass again. Needs to be careful to keep it out of the barrier. That has allowed Busso through up into P12. As Goosens also loses the position to Owen Huxtable and Florent Demort. Apologies. Check back in with the battle over P4 in this race. Sam McCarthy just around a second ahead of Chris Wright, who himself is a second ahead of Joe Wilson. Come through into the fifth lap of this race. Through the tricky second sector. Actually, not tricky second sector. Basically flat out through here. But then the sweeping right-hand downhill corner that invites you in to carry a lot of speed, but need to be careful when you pick up that throttle not to run wide into the gravel. And then one of the trickiest sections of the track, just bleeding off the speed hit for this sweeping right-hander into a sweeping left and hairpin. As Wright edging closer towards McCarthy, but such a tricky track to overtake on with these sweeping corners. And it's actually Joe Wilson who seems to be close to the rear of that car of Wright's. And as they come down into the seventh lap of this race, Sam McCarthy keeping ahead. Not much to choose between these three. And at the moment, neither of these drivers necessarily having a huge pace advantage, so going to have to wait for a mistake. Oh, a mistake from Wilson there, so we're not going to see an overtake because of that one. As Wilson rejoins the circuit, as we have yellow flags out behind. As what has happened? Oh, as we've got SimQuips in the barrier, getting underway again. See what happened here too. Oh, just straight into the barrier. Is he going to collect Busso? He does. Oh, drifts off into the racing line, keeps the brakes held. But that is not going to be doing wonders for his race. As Chris Wright has made it past Sam McCarthy. Let's see if we can see where this happened. Oh, unfortunately not. But Chris Wright now up into P4 while we were watching that replay of SimQuips finding the wall. So McCarthy hanging on to the back of Wright though. Different lines being taken by these drivers through the hairpins. It's worth pointing out for those who follow real life motorsport, this is the old version of the Zandvoort circuits without the banked turn 3 and the final corner. Does restrict the lines that are really viable, as you will see drivers taking various different lines in real life through those hairpins. The banking allows you to ride right up there near the barrier, but on this version of the circuit, not such an easy corner to try and set up a move into. As Steve Goosens, oh, I was going to say recovering from his earlier crash, but well, as we check in with it, going very, very sideways through the hairpin at the back of the circuit. And perhaps Goosens just needs to be a little bit more careful with his right foot, getting this car very, very sideways, and already found the barrier once. As for now, needs to get his head back in it and catch up to the back of Demore again. As it looks like Joe Wilson, after that slide earlier, has caught back up to this battle between Chris Wright and Sam McCarthy. And these three drivers together again on circuit, who seem to be inseparable. As Joe Wilson sliding again into the barrier. What has happened here? Joe Wilson, as he comes around end of the second sector, just a little bit too much throttle again. This circuit catching out a lot of drivers with just applying too much throttle out of the corners, especially in that twisty second sector. Very easy to just put too much throttle in with too much steering lock, and away goes the rear of the car. Now this makes it a two-way fight in between Sam McCarthy and Chris Wright. So they come down towards the first corner. Just behind, we can see another battle now, as Balazs Fahir got past Joe Wilson after that incident. And Wilson not lost too much speed with those crashes. So maybe has lost a little bit of stability in that car. Steve Goosens brought back up to Demore. So certainly he's got the pace, just needs to keep his car under control. And definitely would expect to see this driver move up the grid. Last time around a 131.1 for Goosens, 143.4 for Demore. So definitely a pace advantage here for Goosens. Just needs to be careful, and I didn't expect to have such an overspeed on Demore there, and Goosens very nearly making contact with the rear of the car ahead of him. We just seen yellow flags out for Busso GT as well. We cut to the end of that incident as the car just pitching backwards across the circuit. But it's back underway now. As Sam McCarthy battling hard here with Chris Wright. See if we can see what's set up. A series of moves. They come down towards turn one. Seems like Chris Wright just going deep into the corner, and that's allowed Sam McCarthy to come alongside. So it ended up being opportunistic there for McCarthy. Very nearly was able to slip on by up the inside, but Wright getting the drive out of the corner, realised didn't bring the car back into the apex, just concentrated on the exit and managed to hold on to the position. But these two will continue this battle. And another battle, which is continuing behind, is over P8. Lorenzon and Faggy as we come into the third and final sector. And look at our lap times last time around. Faggy holding a half a second advantage over Lorenzon. May need a little bit more of a pace advantage to make an overtake here at Zandvoort, or see if he can coax a mistake out of the driver ahead. As we've got three pairs of battlers at this section of the track, with Chris Wright, Sam McCarthy, Balazs Fahir and Joe Wilson, and Lorenzon and Faggy all battling. The yellow flags out for Sam McCarthy. I think that was just avoiding Katramaya there, who we saw stranded in the middle of the track. And Joe Wilson getting in the rear of his car out again. And now Sam McCarthy, close as he's been all race to Chris Wright. thank you, Nordmit, for pointing out that we had no sound. I had not realised that. As we head forward now in the 12th lap of this race, we have a four-way battle over P4. Chris Wright had a Sam McCarthy, Balazs here, and Joe Wilson. As Steve Goosens gets past Laurent Demort. Let's see what's happened here. Brilliant. Nice easy pass there for Goosens. And again, our drivers splitting out into their three pairs, with Christian Faggy getting very close to the back of Lorenzon. Looking to the inside on the final or second to last corner, not a usual place to try and look for an overtake, but Lorenzon running wide, and this is opportunity for Faggy as he slips through into P8. Is Lorenzon going to try and come back at him? Nope, doesn't seem like he's going to have the opportunity to, and has to just tuck back in behind. So Christian Faggy up into P8. Joe Wilson chasing down Balazs here. Has shown good pace during this race, but along with Steve Goosens, has just been having a little bit of trouble holding on to the car, and we've seen Joe Wilson have numerous trips into the wall, but still going strong. These Porsche Cup cars are made of something else. I actually believe that actually might be the case. I think these Porsche Cup cars are metal rather than carbon fibre, so can deal with crashes just a little bit more. We have yellow flags out for Katchelmeyer in the second sector, and potentially has collected Florent Demort. We have got a couple of yellow flags out in that sector of the track. Just over 8 minutes remaining in this race. The battle between Sam McCarthy and Chris Wright continues. Oh, with the rear of that car of Sam McCarthy just getting a little bit twitchy. Perhaps getting just a little bit over eager on the throttle. But Chris Wright has been doing well in this race, just keeping things together, soaking up the pressure that Sam McCarthy has been providing pretty much the entirety of this race, whether being in front or behind. And I'm not sure if we've actually seen many, if any, off-track moments for that SimQuips liveried car of Chris Wright. We have yellow flags out again for Joe Wilson, who is facing backwards. What has happened here for Joe Wilson? Oh, just getting a little bit twitchy on the curb and can't get the car back under control. And wow, that was a spin that started an entire corner before, and that has allowed Christian Faggy through up into P7. So Faggy made up a number of positions over the past few laps, and well, the front of that car of Joe Wilson's is looking somewhat worse for wear, as Lorenzon, who's just been having a quiet race so far, battling with Faggy earlier on, is now catching on to Joe Wilson and could in a couple of laps have a bit of an opportunity presented to him, as I'm sure the car of Joe Wilson cannot be that slippery down the straights. Front of that car with the bonnet up as it is must be quite draggy. McCarthy still close onto the back of Chris Wright, looking for an opportunity to get past. Is closer now, is threatening to attempt to move, but is not quite close enough to get alongside and to earn the corner off of Chris Wright, so does have to just stick in behind, but is looming ever closer, and any sort of mistake from Chris Wright is going to open up an opportunity for McCarthy. So Chris Wright, still 5 minutes left in this race, has to keep it clean until he sees the checkered flag. There's any sign of weakness, and well, you have to be sure Sam McCarthy will pounce. There's yet another yellow flag for Joe Wilson, just slipping backwards and backwards in this race. There's Joe Wilson has another incident and gets passed by Goosens and Demore. What was a solid race for Wilson earlier on, running up with this pair we're watching right now, has gone from bad to worse. He now finds himself down in P13. It will be a race to forget for Joe Wilson. Three drivers we haven't spoken about much in this race, and that's just because they've sort of been driving around on their own. There's our race leader, Johan Leffert, who is leading this race by some 6 seconds ahead of this man, Ryan Ware. And then he's being followed by Bernhard Bendel, another 5 seconds back. And yeah, these just been having a race of their own, but will solidly finish on the podium, barring any incidents or mistakes in these final 3 minutes and 10 seconds. But no such quiet race for this pair. Sam McCarthy and Chris Wright have had the polar opposite, battling throughout, and neither can let up. The hard circuits pass on in Zandvoort, as we said before, will just require some sort of mistake. But as Chris Wright approaching the back marker traffic, which is well, disappearing off track, and well, I don't know where that 104 car ended up, but definitely not on the racing circuit. Behind this battle, Laurent Demore is also catching up to Steve Goosens, finding his feet. Front Demore was struggling for a bit of pace earlier in the race, but is now matching lap times with Steve Goosens, who perhaps just didn't get the opportunity to practice so much in these Porsche Cup cars, but is now finding their pace, finding the rhythm and is beginning to challenge Steve Goosens, who, let's not forget, has picked up some damage on that car. And could we see something of a challenge as we come into our final lap of this race? Actually, there will be one more after this one, as Johan Leffert is currently going into the second sector now, so we'll start one more lap after this one. And I think one driver who will not want this race to extend any further is Chris Wright, who will just be hoping for the checkered flag. But we'll have to go one more lap. And there will be one more lap for Sam McCarthy to try and chase him down. More close as he has been, looking for an opportunity into the first corner, wasn't one there, but sticking behind Steve Goosens. As our leader enters onto the final lap of this race, he's just having to clear some lap traffic and navigate the treacherous conditions of a Joe Wilson off the circuit, who now, unfortunately for him, drops to last place. And will Sam McCarthy have a look to the inside? He does, into the first corner of the final lap of this race, as Sam McCarthy, side by side now with Chris Wright, has got the inside line through before the hairpin. Is Chris Wright going to have a look into the hairpin? He doesn't. Sam McCarthy with the bold move. Perhaps Chris Wright just getting distracted there by a donutting Joe Wilson in the gravel. But that is Sam McCarthy now up into P4. And, well, getting the move done and the final opportunity to do so. And just needs to hold on to this position for one more sector. But one driver whose position is under no threat whatsoever is the driver who has led from lights to flag, is Johan Leffert, as he comes around at the final corner now. Take the win here at Zandvoort. As he crosses the line. Congratulations to our race winner, Johan Leffert, who will be followed by Ryan Ware, who takes another podium position in this Porsche Cup. Be followed by Bernard Bendel, who in the end wasn't that far behind, just over a second is the gap. Followed home by Sam McCarthy and Chris Wright, who continue to battle for P4, but it is Sam McCarthy who will finish ahead. And they're followed by Balazs Feher. Christian Faggy will take P7 in the race. And good race for Marco Lorenzo, who brings it home P8. As Busso GT crosses the line in P9. And to round out the top 10 will be Jordan Smith, the Smithy Racing car, number 112. There's Steve Goosens coming around the final sector now. Has had an eventful race with a few incidents, but we'll be happy just to finish just outside the top 10. As Florent de Moor will be our final driver to finish this race. And we'll cross the line, I believe, in P12. Unfortunately, again, I think we'll not actually have a proper race finish as Joe Wilson is currently doing donuts in the gravel. We do need to wait for him to finish his final lap. We might just return to garage with the damage sustained to that car. As he does so, let's see if we can take a look at. We cannot. We just have to wait for this session to finish, if it ever does. Okay, so there we have it, everyone. As we see the results of our race, won by Johan Leffe, followed by Ryan Ware, Bernhard Bendel, Sam McCarthy, Chris Wright, Balazs Fahir, Christian Fagey, Marco Lorenzon, Busso GT. Running at the top 10 was Smith. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. We will be back next week when the pitskill.io Porsche Cup, sponsored by SimQuips, will be going to the land of the rising sun. We head to Suzuka. Please do tune in for that. And until next time, have a very lovely rest of your day. Good night.